weekend. Ira Epstein with your weekend edition of your Spider ETF stock market wrap-up for this Friday, August 9th, 2024. Yeah, I'm getting this done before I go to the auto track. Hope my friend, I got my fingers crossed that he can set a world record. It should be exciting as could be. I love some of the comments there. No, he wouldn't let you in that car. It'd probably be a death trap. It'll be interesting. I can't wait. He does have other Lamborghinis there. He's bringing them there, and McLarens, and those will be able to go down the track in, close our eyes, and see how fast we can go. It'll be interesting and fun. Done this all my life, so for me, I can't wait. This was a week I could wait for. I mean, this was a week that if I wasn't gray-haired, I'd have been gray-haired. We saw the carry trade, the first leg of it, a big leg maybe, get unwound. JP Morgan thinks somewhere between 55 to 75% of the carry was unwound, but that still leaves anywhere from 45 to 25% to do, so if they're correct. So that's still a little scary. The Bank of Japan stepped in and did mediation, if you will. They said as they raise rates, they'll do it in market environments that won't disrupt it the way it is, because their own market went down 12.5% in one day and then up 10.4% the next. They never saw a break like that since 1987. 87, you realize you're almost 40 years later. So they realized the impact of what happened through there. And unfortunately, in 1987, I know what happened in the markets. I had my own stock firm back then. I think it was right around that time. I'd have to look up the years. All right, doesn't matter. So one of the things we have to start thinking about, and I know there's been a big rotation into Russell, and I've been listening to all the pros as to what they're saying, and one thing keeps ringing out that I agree with. Obviously, the benefit to low-cap companies that make up the Russell are low borrowing costs. That's a definite part that helps them. But what they also need is demand, equal. If the whole economy starts coming down, and that's the reason interest rates are falling, you got to be very careful. Those are not necessarily things that get companies up and running. And the one thing that's been behind the eight ball, and I keep hearing traders on CNBC talk, is they want to own industry because that's the thing that'll come back. And I agree with that. The whole idea of cutting interest rates is to get industry going again in America and pick up a level. All right. But just be careful. That may not be the spot to be. Number two is I'm not in the school right now that thinks that what we've just done coming down in August and September is going to take the market up to new highs in the month of September. Could I be wrong? I'm going to be the first guy to tell you the naysayers beat me all the way through this year. I didn't think a lot of the things. But if you just look at how cycles work in markets, that wouldn't make sense. I have allergy attack today, don't know why. So I'm not in that school of camp. That camp in the school by any means. I think we're going to go into a churning type event for a couple of months here. Come the end or middle of September, after we see what the Fed does, I want you to go out and on Google, type in on a cycle, when the Federal Reserve, the first rate cut, does the market go up or down off the first rate cut? Then we'll talk about that next week. All right, Palantir, Ben, I think it's Ben Smith. You're going to be hearing from us next week. You have won something, a great idea. Ben wrote and said, hey, they just got a big contract with Microsoft, and it's a lot of defense work, a lot of top secret. This market, until you take out that low again, I think you have to think a real serious bottom is in place in this market. You came back, you challenged all this, and the market took off. It's not screaming by me. It is screaming to me a bottom is in place. There's a huge difference between the two. This market's up big. The range this week was monstrous, almost a $9 range in a $30 stock. That's a huge, huge deal. And you came back and you've got some resistance here. Where did the market fight the battle? And you hear me say this to you so often. Markets like to fight battles at the 18-day average of closes. It didn't make it down through here. Here's the 200-day moving average with it. didn't make it there. Look where the market stopped on the rally. How often do you hear me say the purpose of Bollinger Bands is to act as a break on the top and the bottom? Don't get me wrong. If the market's trading broad, I really like that. But when the market gets into a narrow band, it's meant to break out of it. That's how you come out of narrow bands. When you make bands super narrow, you have to push out the Bollinger Band up or down. It won't stay in that narrow band forever. So you've got to learn these concepts. Go to my courses at the website, IraEpstein.com, and under courses, it's there for you. Learn how to play with the enhanced Bollinger Band course. You can see what it's done. So I do think that until this low is taken out this week, that a major bottom has been formed. You're overbought, you're against an upper Bollinger Band. I'll wait for the right chart action before I say to do anything. In Amazon, you're in a downtrend, pretty steep one on a weekly chart. You pulled back into the Bollinger Band. Momentum is still down. Sellers are probably waiting at 183.40, and they probably have stops over the 190.60 area, but I do think they did some short covering this week. On RSP, this is the equal weight S&P. Higher high, lower low. And you tell me, didn't the market return to that 18-day average and all this panic this week and try to figure out, is that a good enough spot? Dell continues to just fall apart. I keep hearing over and over how much so many of these analysts on TV like Dell. They like Dell. What's there to like about Dell? It's under the Bollinger Band, which means now you're in an oversold area probably, which you are. But there's nothing that I like about Dell. CrowdStrike, interesting, for the first time. You finally went down, you hit a major moving average and the Bollinger Band. Last week I told you, I said I thought the shorts were covering. Go back and take a look. Actually, I said it this week. I said, that's where I think they're coming out of this play if they're in it. And so far I'm in the area where I think that. Now, it's not a buy. There's a difference between covering shorts and just walking away from a play, which is what I think the pros are doing. You can buy it. I'm fearful they're going to get hit with lawsuit upon lawsuit from all kinds of different things, and that can mire them down a bit. It'd be sort of like what Boeing did, if you think about it. They got to go through that bit of HELL. When we take a look at this market, lower highs, lower lows, and yet it came back up in Meta. One of you wanted me to cover Meta. I do, so I didn't go with that. The resistance is the upper Bollinger Band. You're sort of in no man's land. It's a great company, but it's not going anywhere. You have been stuck, and you haven't been able to do anything since the end of May. If you really look at what this has done, you've gone nowhere in that course of time. KRE, I'm looking for this market to get its legs this week. I think the pros are going to come in and nibble on the longs here at this combination of 50-12. I think they'll bail if it gets under 47.67. And if the market can come back, they'll cross their fingers. They'll look at this area up here as the resistance point. On MCHI, you know how negative I am. I don't see how any American in their right mind is buying anything in China stock market with the new rules that they put out. How do you know what you're buying other than a chart? If you want to play a chart, I get it. But if you're playing fundamentals, you're in your own world that I don't understand. In the industrial sector, this is the market that I think will see the play when interest rates get cut. And this is the one that eventually should come alive as demand in the economy comes back. But the demand in the economy doesn't come back on the first cut. Often the first cut's because things are getting worse and or the Fed's trying to get ahead of the curve of it getting a lot worse. So I'm a little concerned there. I don't see a trend. I see the upper and lower Bollinger Bands being hit. I'm still a bear in the energy sector. I see the resistance up here. This is a weekend. You couldn't pay me to take a position on energy parts this weekend. Iran's military, their military came out and said, the Ayatollah says we should strike Israel and strike them hard. I don't know the day, the hour. I don't know how they're going to strike them. I don't know what happens to oil in the region. I'll be quiet. I'll wait. Better time to trade. Dollar is bearish. You heard me, bearish. The market's building in that the Fed is cutting rates. That's not bullish the dollar initially. They're cutting rates to tell you the market's weakening. The countries that are ahead of us are all those that have been cutting the rates. They're further along in the cycle of getting their economies coming back. I think you're going to see willing sellers in the market up here from the 100-day average in green to the 18. In the gold market, I've got all the same reasons to be bullish as before. Number one, carry trade, I guess. Number two, I still see inflation being sticky, not going higher, being sticky. Number three, the loss in value of the U.S. dollar. And number four, I haven't seen China buy in a long time, and I think they will come back in to buy. Their people want to do something, all right? They're fed up with real estate and a lot of other things. And as I said, the way they keep changing their stock market, you want to sell something, I got to get permission from my boss. That's craziness. Copper market telling you that China's in problems. It could still reach down here, so that is very possible. It did it in the futures market. It hit all the key averages on the downside. We'll have to see if this one can. It's still oversold, but bearish. So let me take you back there. So that's what I see going on at this point in time. Now, this morning, by the way, did I give you the news of the day? You're going to get a grain report at 11 o'clock. You're going to get the U.S. Treasury, the July monthly statement of receipts and outlays. Baker Hughes today came out and the rig count rose by 2. I give a lot more information on that in my written update. The reports this week that are important: PPI Tuesday, CPI Wednesday. Now, those are going to be reports that fit into the PCE report, which comes a week later. And one of the reports that, for whatever reason, the market's going to really take a hard look at are retail sales. Just how bad off is the U.S. consumer? This is going to be a big report. And this is a report they're hoping that the Fed looks at. And if it's weak, just another nail in there. Now, as I look at it, just my own thing, these two reports have to come in steady to weak, and then we write off that, we can say that the month of July is definitely one in the Fed's camp, why they should cut rates. And then in September, we're going to get all this again before the next meeting, and that cements the future as to, I think, how much the Fed will cut. And that'll be another game that we'll be talking about, and I think you've got to do that. You know, for those of you that watched my this morning, I said I thought you were going to have a churning market. I figured the weekend, this is now when people are taking their last summer breaks. You know, in Europe, the big traders, they're out of the market. They're at their villas, they're on their boats, they're with their family vacation. Not everybody's super rich, but away you go. And sometimes they just close offices for a while there. Well, I see that. I'm seeing volume in our markets get very tight and low in different areas. So pivot points are something you use in this time. It helps you, number one, hone if you want to go long or short. If you're a day trader, it offers an opportunity. So learn to use the pivot point formula. I learned it from one of the top pros in the industry, and when I learned it, I couldn't believe it. I was watching him manage money on it, and I was totally amazed at how he did.